Bonjour, bonjour. Hello, everybody. Big surprise, we're back inside Notre-Dame. Been working on this one now off and on for a few weeks and trying to figure out the perfect time to come in here because we're going to talk today about the transept, specifically the rose windows and some of the paintings that are over here. But it usually gets to be one of the most clogged parts of the cathedral when you come in to visit. And so I was kind of trying to figure out the time. Mass literally just ended about 3 minutes ago. And I thought, we'll do this quickly right now. So I wanted to share with you about the rose windows. And specifically, this was a big change in the architecture of the church. So as we know, the church was started in 1190. And then when it got to the 13th century, the mid-13th century, around 1248, they decided, oh, we actually need to redo this. So that's when they said, we need to add the chapels, and we need to extend basically the transept of the church. So if you are here and you're standing and you see this wall that's right there before you go up to the vaults, that is where the cathedral once ended. So where I'm standing did not exist until the mid-13th century. And so they added on to it, creating this kind of more of an offset where the church would have been more straight up and down instead of when you look down from the sky and you see the shape of a cross. It used to just kind of be one big rectangle with the curved part on the back at the chevet. So they added on to the church, and with that they decided, let's put some rose windows in. I'm still fighting my allergies here, so excuse me every once in a while if I have to clear my throat a little bit. But this part of the church was all done, as I said, in the mid-13th century, and it was done under the architect Jean de Chalais. And he really is the first architect that we know of. We don't know the first architects, the early architects that built the church, because back then it wasn't about the architects, it was more about the donors than it was the actual artisan. So we don't really know who the first ones are, but we do know Jean de Chalais. He's the one who created the rose windows. The very first rose window is the one in the Basilique Saint-Denis, which is up north of Paris. There is an earlier one of the 11th century that they say, but it was more of an oculus, which you see the small round ones up there to the left. Those are called oculus. And then once they figured out with the construction how they could reinforce and strengthen the wall and do it, and then add the more surface space for actual glass, then this is when the beautiful rose windows were born and created. But the first church was very dark. You didn't have as much windows because, again, you didn't have the chapels. You only had the windows up at the top, and then so they added the rose windows. Over time, we'll do another one later because the windows you see up there in the top left that are very dark, I cannot wait to share all those with you, but I'm going to wait till the scaffolding comes down, because until the scaffolding comes down you can see how dark it is up there. But the windows itself of the church go from the 13th century all the way to 1950 and soon to 2025, well, in the next few years. So, but the rose window here, and I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit on it. So the south window is what we're looking at. I'm standing in the north, we're looking at the south. The south window was the last one of the 3 rose windows. This was put in 1258. It is 12 petals. Let me zoom in on it for you. And when you see the one behind me, you'll see there's a slight difference of that between the two of them. But it was created again 13th century, but this wall and this window went through a lot. So you have some pieces in there 13th century, but I'd say 90% is 13th century. You have a few that are 18th century. You even have a few that are 19th century under Viollet-le-Duc, but not as much as sometimes reported. There was an American TV show that's a big news show that did a show about it, and they said that, you know, more than half of it is not original, but that's not true at all. I actually have a little map that tells what every window is and tells when exactly the year it was put in, and it's really like 9 windows are the difference between the 13th century and over time. But the window itself, because you're on the south side gets direct light. So Viollet-le-Duc used warm colors on the south side, so think reds, oranges, yellows, and the north side, because they don't get any direct light from the sun in the day are cool colors, and you'll see kind of a difference when we go from side to side. But this one, the center of it is, see how close I can get in there. The center of it is Christ in Majesty. And then you have those four kind of petals around it. And those four petals are the four evangelists. So you have Jean with the eagle, Matthew that is usually seen with an angel, as an angel, or sometimes a young man, Mark with the lion, and Luke with the ox, and they're around in there. But that replaced the one that was added in the 18th century of the Cardinal White. And he's also, that one has been taken out, was moved into another part of the church, but Viollet-le-Duc was the one who removed all of those. But this one you do see, when you really zoom in there, you really do see a lot more red. When you pull back, it really appears to be more purple. But it's really amazing. The second layer around there, you have martyrs and confessors. You also have standing figures of women there, and those are the wise virgins and the foolish virgins. You could hear the drill. They're still working on the spire. I'll take you outside for a few minutes at the end. But see all the red behind there? You really don't get to see that down here with the naked eye without, I mean, maybe if you're a young kid with really good eyes, but those days are numbered for some of us. But it is so beautiful. There also was added windows of the life of St. Matthew were added into the windows as well. There's 6 of those. And then just below it, you have these fantastic windows. And these windows were all added under Viollet-le-Duc. So none of this existed, this little gallery here. Go back a little bit. None of these had been there until Viollet-le-Duc added all of it. And so these, the galleries were all done by Alfred Jarrant. And they are all of their different prophets, but in the very center, getting there to the 4 in the center, you also have the 4 evangelists as well, and they're being held up by different prophets. These windows are really beautiful. Again, you can't really see from down here. I have the iPhone 16 Pro, and the camera is amazing. So depending on your camera, you could really zoom in and get some really good pictures, and even just see them a little bit better. But they're still going to do work on this. They have work to do, especially on the south. They did tests on it, everything during the restoration. They looked at all the windows, they cleaned them on the inside, but they're going to do work on the outside. They need to clean the outside. And that's kind of the project outside right now while they're finishing up the spire, the base of the spire, and then they're going to do work on the back of the church and then do some work on the transept on the outside. So I hope that it does not mean that the windows will be covered up for a bit of time, but hopefully not. But it is pretty, it's stunning. I remember when I first came in here, the first week I came in here after it opened, the public was only allowed to come in in the afternoon every day after 3:30. So it was always, it was December, so it was usually, getting pretty dark. So it took about, I think it was about 10 days after it opened, and I came in at 7:45 in the morning. It's still dark, but I just sat here and watched the sun come up, and just literally, it was almost like a dimmer switch slowly turning on. It was just amazing. But the window really is fantastic. But Viollet-le-Duc, one thing he did when they had to take apart the entire window, and when they took apart the entire window, they took away the ribbing, everything that's in there, and there is metal behind what you see as far as the stone. And so this window, you can see if you look in the very center, there's horizontal straight across, and the vertical straight up and down in the middle, and it did not look like that. So basically turn it one pedal, and that's how it was. And so by doing this and taking it all apart, recreating it, they re-strengthened it. It was the third time they had to do it since they built it, because the west side was really kept settling and basically was destroying part of it, and so it would settle and parts of it would start to, you know, move into the earth, just like the facade of Saint Eustache. So he had to take it apart and put it back together, because the thing was a Gothic church, and this is Gothic. It's all about light. So it's about the appearance of lightness, but it's also about the letting in light into the church and what is the divine light. So it was all about also telling the stories of the Bible in images, because people didn't read. So with the window, although you look at that and you think, oh, that's glass and it's so delicate, but really it's incredibly strong. Partially because of all of the pieces and how it's sitting, that it's also engineering marvel of how they're dispersing the weight and everything in here. But you also have the keystone there in the center. That is about straight up from there is the spire. So it's above there. That whole middle part was gone. Part of what was above me here and part of the south was also what broke through. But luckily that was all recreated. And I think it was last September we watched when they did the Patrimony, we watched the artist repainting that, creating a new keystone for up there, and it has the Virgin. But now I'll get to the other side of the box here and show you the paintings above me, because there's a massive glare. So here on the northwest side, we have two more of the Lemaze paintings that I adore. And both of these are about St. Andrew. On top is the Martyrdom of St. Andrew. It was done by Charles Le Brun in 1647. This was the first one that Charles Le Brun did. He was only 28 years old when he did this. And it is moments before his death. So usually St. Andrew is depicted on his cross, and the one right below it is him trembling with joy at the sight of his tormentor. And this one was done by Gabriel Blanchard, and it is 1670. The above one, 1647. And St. Andrew is known because he died on the cross, but the cross was the shape of an X, because he did not want to die on the shape of the cross that Christ was killed on. So he wanted his cross to be different, so it was an X-shaped cross. And so you get that with the shape of his body right there. And also, if you know the Scottish flag, the cross of St. Andrew, and that's kind of where you could always remember. It's a little cute little trick to remember St. Andrew. These boxes here that are beautiful carved wood, these were all done under Viollet-le-Duc. And at the top they have wooden sculptures of angels, and there's one up here with a trumpet. And what I love is, look at this painting in the left-hand corner. That is a reflection of the angel that is up there, and sometimes people think it's actually in the painting, but I do love how it's actually just the reflection. And this painting here is the Adoration of the Shepherds. It's done by Jerome the First Franken, 1585. It is one of the few Dutch paintings that was painted here in Paris in the style of a Dutch painting. This is not a Lemaze painting. It was done again 1585. And it has the gentleman in red on the left, right next to the angel, is Christophe Tito, and he was a president of the parliament. His son is the one who commissioned to have this created. It is quite beautiful. You could see kind of without a glare there. And there's going to be a Lemaze painting there, and it's the 14th one. This was one that was not here before the fire. And it is coming from Arras, which is where there's the Beaux-Arts Museum there. And they actually have 20 of the Lemaze paintings. But that museum is closed for like the next 6 or 7 years. And I was so upset because I'd always wanted to go up there to see the Lemaze, and I waited too long, and now it's closed for quite some time. It's actually not too busy in here. Beautiful. But you could see all the other windows. So you have the 1950 windows, those oculus that are there in the transept, they were originally there, the ones on the nave, inside the nave. And of course, the ones when the cathedral was built, these were not here because this little portion was not. But the Viollet-le-Duc under Louis XV, Louis XV is the one who went through and took all the windows out, except for the rose window. I'm not sure if I said that already, but Viollet-le-Duc put these back. He put the oculus back in, so he cut those back and put them in. But we don't really know what any of the original stained glass, so the pre-rose window, we don't know what the stained glass looked in the rest of the church. We only have some notes that were done in 1774 by a historian, and Viollet-le-Duc used those as a starting point, but there wasn't a lot to these notes that shared what was in there. But we'll go up here real quick. I'm going to show you. Take advantage of it not being too crowded right here. So here in the center of the transept, this is where the biggest damage was. And so you had, the entire ceiling came in. The spire was here. When the spire fell, it broke in half and fell into here. And it actually knocked down one of the chandeliers, fell to the ground. It got pretty dented up. And then this whole part, they wouldn't let anybody come underneath here. So all the debris was removed by using a radio controlled arm. But the liturgical tray is what this is called, the marble tray. It had to all be rebuilt because it literally caved in. Underneath it is a steel platform. And this steel platform, the whole thing weighs 110 tons. The steel platform, basically has the shape. So it's not 3, 5, 6, 7 massive layers of marble. It's in a tray and they sit on top of it. But the steps alone, there's 126 slabs. And then the flat part, there's 156 slabs. And the limestone came from Portugal, and the blue stone, stone came from Belgium. And they did it so it would match as well as it could for everywhere else. But the furniture, the liturgical furniture, is all new too. And this was all done by Guillaume Bardet in 2024. He was, at first there was 70 people that were in the running to create the liturgical furniture, and he was down to the last 6. He is the only one that did it in bronze. Everybody else, their idea was in marble, and he came to the church and he saw how white everything was, and he thought there's no way you could compete with all of the stone and how white everything is. So he decided to do it in marble. And it is, at first I didn't like any of these contemporary things, but they've grown on me. And you have the liturgical tray is supposed to represent kind of the Last Supper, which when you know that, it kind of does make sense. You have the altar in the center. And then of course we've talked about the wood carved stalls in the back, but we're gonna go to the other side now so we could check out the north window and also the beautiful statue of the Virgin. All right, now we're on the south side looking at the north side. If you look at this, you might instantly notice that it seems much brighter. The north side, as I was saying, because you're never getting the direct light. So it's always the west, south, and east that gets the light from the sun. And so there is a lot of blue, but also it just is much lighter. So you could really kind of see those images so that you could also, it's helping to diffuse that light a little bit. This was done in 1245 is when they installed this one. The first one they put in was the west window, which we'll talk about when we talk about the facade in a week or two. But the north side here, in the 16 petals, it's Old Testament. And what's really kind of cool is they changed the whole way you come into the church when they reopened it. You come in the center door, the Last Judgment, and then you leave the south door, which is St. Anne. And so you go through the north nave, which we've talked about in depth. And starts with the Old Testament. So it's the Old Testament, and then you go around, and then when you come over to this side, this is New Testament, the Pentecost. So it's actually kind of cool. But because it fits in with the window. So the north, you go through, and it's the north in the Old Testament up there. The center of the window is the Virgin, and around it are kings of Judah and prophets, pretty much all the way around it. And all of them are turned and looking towards her. They only used about 7 different poses. And let's see if you can see the Virgin. I'm hoping this is really clear for you. When my face is so close to the phone, I can't see it. But they all are turned to them, and each one of them is holding a scroll, and on that scroll it tells who they are, but even with zooming in, it's really difficult. And there really isn't any sort of book or anything out there that's like, here's every single window in Notre-Dame, and here's who did it, who made it. So that is why there's sometimes weeks in between doing these videos, because I am doing all that research. So there will be eventually a book put together, and I'll do that with every bit of information here on Notre Dame. But you would think that there would be such a thing, but there is not. Even going back to the 19th century of books that I have looked at, and even books that Ville the Duke, it's always just a few paragraphs about the transepts, and even any of the stained glass. But it is really gorgeous. But you could really see the difference in the color if you go in between the two. And then below, again, this was under Ville the Duke by Alfred Gerant, and these are the kings of Judah, which there's the kings of Judah on the facade of the church that go across, and then you have more of the kings of Judah here, and they're kind of standing in front of so beautiful. I love this. I've become obsessed with the stained glass because not only did I do the research on the rose windows, but basically it sent me down a rabbit hole of just stained glass in general. And I've spent days going to 5 or 6 churches in Paris, all of which I want to share all of those things with you, because it's really amazing. Some of the stained glass in some of these churches are just absolutely stunning. And it's funny because now that I've immersed myself so much in the ones here, I was in Saint-Germain de Paris sitting in there, and I looked at the windows and I was like, huh, those look really familiar. Well, sure enough, Alfred Gerant did some of those after he did Notre Dame. So they have the same kind of color and feel to them. And so just like with the churches, once you learn kind of the stories that they depict in art, you then go to other churches and you start to see those same stories, or you see them in the museums. So it's like this whole world opens up, and yet one more thing for me to be obsessed about, but it's okay, I love it. Oh, there's a pigeon in here. I don't know if it's always the same pigeon, but I like to sometimes say tell people it's the Holy Ghost. Which window do you like best? See, look like this. In this image, it looks very clear. Very white, and zoom in a little bit. The west one, which is behind the organ, is so amazing, and the windows in it are so amazing, and that is all 13th century. But unfortunately, you can only see parts of it because you can't see what's behind the organ. So we'll do one about the facade, and then do the windows, but we might have to also use some photos of it, so you could really see, because the detail on it is just absolutely amazing. So also here in the transept, we have a couple paintings, and there's no plaque on this side yet that tells you what it is, but don't worry, I gotcha. The top is the Triumph of Job, and that painting was done in 1636 by Guido Reni, and it is really fantastic. And what's really cool, I went to a seminar with the people that restored the paintings and the chassis, the frame and everything. And that one's really fantastic because it's something that they hadn't seen in a very long time, and it was really fun for the restorers because you see how it has that kind of top curved edge. Behind it, it's a tension, it's an actual tension frame. And so there's huge springs in there, and when they took it apart, it was like crazy how corroded it was. They took it apart, cleaned it, but you tighten it in there with the tension, and that's how it stretches across in that curved format. Really amazing. I could put some pictures of from the slides from the seminar I went to. And then this one here is the stoning of Saint Etienne. And this one is really interesting because he is very important to the church here in especially Paris, because the first church that was here on the island before Notre-Dame was the Church of Saint Etienne. And if you know, the church at the top of the hill behind the Pantheon is Saint Etienne du Mont. Saint Etienne is Saint Stephen. And this was the stoning. So this was his martyrdom and how he was killed. This is very bizarre to see this few people in here at this very moment. But we could see the statue of our Virgin. And she really is so beautiful. She is mid-14th century. She was originally from the Saint Anne Church, which I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but it was here just on the island, and that chapel is still there, but it's inside a building that's owned by the diocese, so we cannot see it. But she was originally placed into the central door of the Virgin, which is the north door, and she was taken out because they thought she was pretty fragile to be up there. She was moved in here in 1818, placed in the chapel during the Revolution. Thankfully, nothing happened to her. And then Viollet the Duke had her moved, and there used to be like a little, almost like a little gate around her. I found an old picture that was taken of her inside this little gate. But she was, again, this is where everything fell in from the ceiling, and she was just basically surrounded by stones and wood, burned wood and everything. She didn't have a scratch on her. Another little side note is the stained glass windows. There's 110 in this church. Not a single window was broken during the fire. They did take all the top windows out, so the high windows, because those were closest to the roof and the heat. They took all of them out, but nothing was wrong with them. One thing you'll also notice if you look at the transepts are each of the stone details that are up here on the top are different. So you have this side on the south, and if you look on the north, it's a little different too. Both done at the same time, but you can see how it's done, just a tiny bit different. But we'll end the inside here with one of my favorite girls. I love her. And then before it reopened, when they would be sharing videos and pictures of the inside, they always were just sharing the nave, showing the nave and the altar. They never were showing the chapels or anything. And so they still had not shown if Joan of Arc was back, Jeanne d'Arc, as we call her. And I was like, oh, is she there? Because even when I would visit before the fire, I would sometimes walk in just to come in, light a candle for her, and leave. And the first night I came in, I took everything in, and when I came around here and I got to the steps and I looked down and I saw her, I was so happy because I was like, oh, she's back. Now, Joan of Arc, pretty much everybody knows of Joan of Arc. I remember even learning about her as a child. But Joan of Arc, the saint, she was killed. She was a teenager. She fought. She saved France from the English. And then she was killed, burned at the stake 3 times. Her body, her ashes thrown into the River Seine in Rouen. But it was her mother that came here. And her mother... Isabelle Ramey, she came to the church and she talked to the bishop, who then talked to Pope Calais III and said, can you please, there's all these things being said about my daughter that aren't right. She was not these horrible things. She was this amazing person. And so he actually asked them, he asked Jean de Ursin, who is, his effigies are here in the church as well, in the chapel. And they opened up they did the investigation because the Pope said, yes, let's do this, let's investigate it. So it was the beginning of her path to sainthood. And it was here at the church of Notre-Dame that it was cleared up, and they said, no, she's, she is rehabilitated her name on July 7th, 1456. They declared that she, was this wonderful, that she did these wonderful things, not this horrible story that they tried to tell about her. She was later canonized a saint, of course, in 1920, but she is, of course, a very important figure in France and in Paris, and she is a patron saint of France. While we have Saint Geneviève and Denis, who are patron saints of Paris, she is a patron saint of France, and I love her. She's on a different base now, but the statue, when she was canonized in 1920, that is when they also asked to have a statue created. So this was by Charles Desarnes. He is the one who created this one, and I love her. I'm so happy whenever I come back in and I see her and know that she's back. We also have here, this plaque has just been recently added. You can see this is for the liberation of Paris. 26th of August, 1944, General de Gaulle. When he came in here, he marched here from the Champs-Élysées, came in here and spoke. There were actual Germans inside the church up above shooting down at people while they were in here at church when he was speaking. Look at this. So beautiful. You could kind of see a little bit color in those windows up there. But I can't wait for the scaffolding to come off there, which should be in probably the next month, they say, they're telling us. But on the north window, there are a few windows that were added later. A lot of things you read, it'll say that at 12th, this is the north one is the only one that's all original 13th century. That's not exactly true. There's about 6 windows in there that have been replaced. The south window above us, some of the windows they took out of that, they placed into other chapels, which when we talked about the chapels in the back, I showed you those. There's one of Adam and Eve, and then also one of the sacrifice of the ox. But let's head on outside, walk a little bit over here. We'll head outside, and we could check on the spire and see how it's doing. It's definitely has slowed, the pace of work has slowed down now that it's been reopened, which, they were working 6 days a week up until, for basically the last 3 years, 6 days a week. And it has definitely slowed down in all of December. I don't think they worked outside at all, but they genuinely deserved some time off. So right now they're working mostly on the spire and the north towers. So you'll see, but they don't work on the weekends. When I come down here on a Saturday, I don't really hear them banging around out there, but that's fine. We're back inside. Take your time. See the windows up there a little bit better. But we're gonna jump outside and see how the spire's going. It's a bit of a blustery, cool day. Yesterday was really toasty. Today is, I kind of like it like this though. So depending on when you come, the entrance is probably going to be different. It always is different. Come this fall though, it's going to be a mess. So if you're coming, they say in September, this is when they're going to do this. They're going to start tearing everything up out here. So this is part of the project that they're going to add 160 trees. They're going to go from here all the way to the back, to the backside edge of the island. So it's going to be a mess, and that's probably going to be a mess for a couple years. They actually have some pictures over here. This shows kind of what is going to happen. Hopefully my Halt Zero marker will be fixed. But all of it could be fantastic when we get this view back without all of the work. But you can see the trees So they'll get rid of the street. So there's a street that goes through here. They're going to get rid of that street. It's going to just be for emergency and the parking spots. So all of that. The bridge going over to Ile Saint Louis is already pedestrianized. So it's going to be a pretty huge project. And then underneath here, underneath the parve, they're going to have this whole like visitors reception area. It's going to be pretty great, but it's going to take a long time. Somebody lost their pants here. You know, there's always questions when you see clothing around. Look at it, it's a beautiful day. But the sun is kind of behind the spire, so this might be kind of difficult, but I'll try to get down the way a little. Oh, I can almost line it up behind the crane. There we go. Hide it in the crane. So you can see they're just, they're doing all of the open work on the base of the spire. They could not start that until the roof was done. So once the roof was done, this last fall-ish, December, they were able to start. So they built all the scaffolding around there. It should be pretty close to coming down. They shaped everything off-site when they built the spire off-site, and then they shaped all the lead decorative pieces around it. But because the open work is essentially exactly like that, open, there's a lot of details. So when you see at the top of each of these buttresses here, you see like kind of the little chapel. That's kind of what the base of it looks like, but it's much bigger. So you have, you know, all of those all of the like the capitals and the curved pieces and everything. So all of those are individual pieces of sheets of lead that were created, and then they have to weatherproof it. They put English paper underneath it to get it so it's watertight. So that's what they're doing. The statues, the 16 statues that were miraculously taken off of the cathedral 4 days before the fire, they are back. They are back here, and they're behind these walls. And those will go up, they say, at the start of the summer, and I cannot wait. I hope they announce when they're going to do that, because I will cancel everything to be here to see those fly across the sky and lowered into place. But they're also working on the towers, and some of the scaffolding's come off, so I think they're probably getting a little closer. But as I've said before, if you've seen some of the videos before, they've changed the way that you're going to go. You'll be able to go this summer to visit the top of the tower. They've changed it. You used to go into the north side, come out the south side. They've reversed that, and they've added some extra platforms in here on the south side. So, and on those platforms, they'll have some stuff about the history of the cathedral and the history of the restoration, and some new viewing points to see into the roof and also to see into the bells. And then you'll come down the north side, and they said the north side's going to also have a bookshop. So that might get me to go up all those stairs if there's a bookshop up there. If they only, I need them to have a library, a research library for me. Here would be great. The clocks is, I know some people get very excited about the clocks. The ones here on the south side are both visible, but still not working quite yet. You hear them working away up there. I love it. I love coming early in the morning, especially when it was on the weekends, and you could hear them banging around, and it is a very distinct sound when the scaffolding is coming apart. One of my favorite sounds. And look, it's a beautiful day in May. I'm recording this on Thursday, I guess it is Thursday. So it's been quite busy with people, clients coming to Paris, which is always a good thing, but I tried to do this early in the morning so we could beat the crowds a little bit. All the trees have the leaves on it again. It's quite beautiful. But it is very chilly in this wind. Look at all those beautiful purple flowers. Just moving from. There you have it. There's a little update here. We'll do some of the outside. I want to do some videos explaining the facade, the front facade, and then I can't wait till we get to the north and south doors of the transepts on the outside. The south, we really can't. I'm gonna talk to the people I know at the church to see if they'll let me come back there and film, because I've been back there for a conference. I'm going to a conference tonight about the Jouvet screen, which will be exciting. Some of the archaeologists that were actually there that discovered, unearthed some of those pieces will be there to talk about it and what they have found and learned. And I'm hoping that we'll get an idea of when they will have the rendering for that done. There you go. There's your little glimpse of Paris today. And I will see you shortly. I'll also be doing an episode of the podcast that'll talk about the rose windows, where sometimes I could go into even more detail on the podcast. So definitely check that out. That should be out this Monday, tomorrow, because you'll see this on Sunday. That should be out on Monday. Hopefully our recording times link up and we'll record that this weekend. So thank you so much for joining. If you want to leave a tip at all, you could send it to PayPal or Venmo at claudine@claudinehemingway.com. Every little bit's always appreciated. And I will see you shortly. And if you're coming to Paris, make sure you reach out to book a tour of Paris. May and June are completely filled up and closed. But if you're coming this summer or this fall is already getting pretty booked up. So reach out to me. I also plan trips. I do a custom planning trip for you. It can help you book everything. And you get kind of access to a lot of the special things I get to do. So reach out. You get to find claudinehemingway.com is my website. And I will see you shortly, and hopefully all have a wonderful rest of your day.